Hello everyone. In my previous lecture, I discussed compounding. And in today's lecture, we will discuss types of compounds. It's also one of the topics in the subject morphology. Let's begin our today's lecture, types of compounds. Types of compound. In English and other languages, there may be a number of different ways of classifying compounds, right? In order to explain the various types of compound, there is one indispensable term I need to introduce, and that is the head of the compound. Because compound consists of two words, right? So we have to identify and spot out that which one is the head one, right? So the head of the compound. In compound, the head is the element that serves to determine both the part of speech, right? So what does the head of the compound determines? It determines the part of the speech, that this word belongs to which part of speech, whether it's noun, it's adjective, it's adverb. What is this, right? So one of the tasks of the head of the compound is to identify that what part of speech this word is, or which part of speech this word belongs to. And the semantic kind denoted by the compound as a whole, or what kind of meaning is given by this compound as a whole, right? So two things are there. The head of the compound determines two things. One, it identifies that which part of speech this word belongs to. And second, that as a whole, it gives meaning, right? Like compound consists of two words. Like we have like sky blue. So you may think, okay, that what does it mean to say sky blue? So if you want to take the meaning of sky blue, so that would be like the semantic meaning, right? Or we can say that it determines the semantic aspect of this word. And when we say sky blue, that which part of speech this word is as a whole, then we can say that we are talking about its part of speech. Now, for example, in English, the base that determine the part of speech of compounds such as greenhouse. So what is the part of speech of this word greenhouse or sky blue? Is always the second one. You can see that in greenhouse, right? So the house will determine that which part of speech this word belongs to. So here we have the second word, that is house. You can see here that in English, the base that determines the part of speech of compounds such as greenhouse or sky blue. So here you will see that here we have house, right? So we can say that this word is a noun then. And here we can see that sky blue. So here we have the second one, that is the blue. So blue is an adjective. Then we can say that this word as a whole is adjective. So in English, the head of the compound will come the second one, right? This is the head, blue. And house is the head. This is the second one. Here we discuss, right, that the head is the element that serves to determine both on part of speech and semantic kind denoted by the compound as a whole, right? So we will discuss the compound greenhouse is a noun. So how can we say that greenhouse is a noun? Because of the house. House is the head of this compound. So from the house we can say it is a noun. And as house is, and sky blue is an adjective because of the blue. You can see sky blue. So blue is adjective. So this word sky blue as a whole will be an adjective. I hope you got it. Right-headed compound. So English is a right-headed compound. Similarly, the second base determines the semantic category of the compound. In the former case, a type of building, you can see this is a former one, like greenhouse, right? This is a kind of building or a type of building. And in the later, a color, right? So which one is color? This one, sky blue. So it determines the first one, a kind of building, and this will determine a kind of color. So that is now the meaning, semantic meaning of this word. Like here we say they're denoted by the compound as a whole. And here we can talk about where it was. And the semantic kind denoted by the compound as a whole, right? So English compound are therefore said to be right-headed. In other languages, however, for example, French and Vietnamese, the head of the compound can be the first or leftmost base. For example, a timber post or a kind of stem and negu in a kind of person. French and Vietnamese can be therefore be said to have a left-headed compounds, right? Primary and synthetic compounds. We are discussing now the types. One is primary and one is synthetic compound. One common way of dividing up compound is into root, also known as primary. So when we have primary or root compound, and synthetic, also known as diverbal compounds. Let's explain these two. Synthetic compounds are composed of two lexemes. Remember that synthetic compounds are composed of two lexemes, where the head lexeme is derived from the verb. The head lexeme, the second one, as we learned that English is a right-headed like compound. So like the second, like the head compound, okay, or the first one, that would be derived from the verb, and the non-head is interpreted as argument of that verb. For example, dog walker. So dog is an argument of this head. Walker, it is derived from the verb walk. You can see, as explained here, that compounds are composed of two lexeme, where the head lexeme is derived from a verb. So this is a head lexeme derived from the verb. And dog, it is an argument. It is interpreted as the argument of this walker. Hand washing. So washing, that is derived from the verb wash. And hand, this is now argument here. And homemade, made is derived from the verb make, and home is argument. Or all synthetic compound. And root compounds, in contrast, are made up of two lexeme, which may be noun, adjective, or verb. The second lexeme is typically not derived from a verb. So this, you can see that at first, let's focus the composition of the root compound. It will consist of nouns, adjective. Here we have made up of two lexeme, which may be nouns, adjective, or verbs. Maybe nouns, maybe adjective, or maybe verbs. The second lexeme is typically not derived from a verb. Example: the interpretation of the semantic relationship between the head and the non-head is root compound is quite free as long as it is not the relationship between a verb and its argument. Compound, for example, we have root compound like windmill. You can see noun plus noun, windmill. So mill, the second, that is head compound, is not derived from a verb. Noun plus noun. And ice core, so both are adjective here. Ice is also adjective and cold is also adjective. So cold is not derived from the verb. And hard hat, you can see one is a noun and one is adjective. So hat, it is like a noun, and hard, it is adjective. And we can see red hot. So red, no one here also is derived from a verb. Hot is not derived from a verb. Hot is an adjective. And red is a noun. So hard is not derived from adjective. So these all are the example of root compounds. We can also classify compounds more closely according to the semantic and grammatical relationship holding between the elements that make them up. One useful classification is that proposed by Bastu and Scalise in 2005. Which recognize three types of relation. First we have that is attributive compound. The first type is what might be called attributive compound. In an attributive compound, the non-head acts as a modifier of the had, right? So what happens in attributive compound? The non-had, the left one, not the right one. The non-had acts as a modifier of the had. So snail, male. So here we can see this is a non-had and this is a had one. So non-had, it acts like a modifier, adjective. So snail modifier what? Male. So it's metaphorically a kind of man that moves like a snail. And a windmill, you can see that wind, it acts like adjective or modifier. So wind modify mill is a kind of mill that is activated by wind. With attributive compound, the first element might express just about any relationship with the had. So there'll be relationship. You can see attributive compound, the first element might express what is the first element, that is wind. And here the first element, that is snail. Sorry, not snail. Oh yes, snail is the first element. So the first element might express just about any relationship with the had. For example, a school book. So this is where we have the head of the compound. And here we have what? A modifier. So a modifier will have relationship with the head. A school book is a book used at school. But a yearbook is a record book of school activities over a year. And a notebook is a book in which one writes note. So there is a relationship between the modifier and the head compound, right? And this relationship is built with the help of non-had, which is a modifier, right? With a new compound, when I have just made up like mud wheel, we are free to come up with any reasonable semantic relationship between the two bases, as long as the first modifies the second in some way. A wheel used in the mud. So we can have different interpretation of this word mud wheel, because mud modifies what? Wheel. So this is a head and this is a modifier, and relationship between mud and wheel. So we can say that a wheel used in the mud, or we can have interpretation like a wheel made out of mud, or we can say that a wheel covered in mud. So we can have different interpretation as long as mud is used as modifier and shows relationship with a wheel, and so on. Some interpretations are more plausible than others, of course, but none of these is ruled out. All interpretations are correct, but one might be more like appropriate than another one, right? The second we have, that is coordinative compound. In coordinative compound, the first element of the compound does not modify the second. We learned that in attributive, the non-had modifies the had one. And here we can see that in this type of compound in coordinative, where the first element, which is a non-had, will not modify the second one, right? Instead, the two have equal weight. Both will be equal in weight. For example, in English, compounds of this sort can be designate something which shares the denotation of both base elements equally, or is mixture of the two base elements. So both may have equal weight, or both may have the mixture of each other. For example, coordinative compounds, like we have producer, director. So both have equal weight, or prince, consort, or we can say blue, green, or we can say doctor, patient. So both are sometimes the mixtures, or sometimes what happens, they both have equal weight. A producer-director is equally a producer and a director. So both at the same time. A producer-director is equally a producer also and a director also. And a press concert is the same time as a prince and a consort. And in the case of blue-green, the compound denotes a mixture of the two colors, blue-green. Finally, there are also coordinative compounds that denote a relationship between the two bases, like doctor-patient, right? It denotes relationship between the two bases or patient confidentiality. So we will turn to these below. For coordinative compounds, we can say that both elements are semantic heads, right? So in coordinative compounds, we can say that both elements are semantic heads. No one is, because they have equal weight. That's why we say that both are both compounds are like semantic heads. Now, subordinative compounds. We find a third kind of semantic grammatical relationship in subordinative compounds. In subordinative compounds, one element is interpreted as argument of the other, usually as its object. Typically, this happens when one element of the compound either is a verb or is derived from a verb. So as synthetic compounds, we look. So synthetic compounds and subordinative compounds are same. Above are subordinative compound. In English, some more examples are given in 27 example. Like with ER, truck driver, or hand mixer, or line tamer. With ing like truck is derivation. We can see that truck driver. So driver, it is derived from the verb drive. And we can see truck driving. You can see that driving is derived from the verb drive. Or food shopping. Here we can see that shopping is derived from the verb shop. And holding is derived from the verb hold. And we can say that shun like meal preparation. You can see that here that shun and here we have preparation. So preparation is derived from the verb prepare, and invasion is derived from the verb invade. And main cause containment, and we can see that containment is derived from the verb contain, right? It's easy to see that subordinative compounds are interpreted in a very specific way. That is, the first element of the compound is interpreted as the object of the verb that form the base of the deverbal noun. For example, a truck driver is someone who drives trucks. Food preparation involves like preparing food, and so on, right? So these are some of the example of taken from other languages. So we want go here because it's Spanish and Italian. So that was the end of today's lecture. That was type of compound. So we discussed, let me revise the lecture. We discussed in detail types of compound. And types of compound, first we discussed the head of the compound, like the semantic role and part of speech. Then we discussed that English language have right-headed compound. And then we discussed primary and synthetic compound. And then we discussed like attributive compound, coordinative compound, and subordinative compound with example. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to provide your valuable feedback. And please don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. Thank you so much.